Hello, everyone, and welcome to the TDWI webinar program. I'm Andrew Miller, and I'll be your moderator. For today's program, we're going to talk about driving breakthrough AI innovation in financial services with a RAG playground and agentic AI. And our sponsors today are Databricks and Impetus. For our presentations today, we'll hear first from Fern Halper with TDWI. And after Fern speaks, we'll be joined by Prasanna Selvaraj with Databricks and Ravishankar Rao Vahabjosila with Impetus for presentations and a discussion. Before I turn over the time to our speakers, please allow me to go over a few basics. Today's webinar will be about an hour long, and at the end of their presentations, our speakers will host a question and answer period. So if at any time during these presentations you'd like to submit a question, just use the Ask a Question area on your screen to type in your question. If you have any technical difficulties during the webinar, you can click on the Technical FAQs area and you'll receive technical assistance. And if you'd like a copy of today's presentation, please locate the resource window to download the PDF. Lastly, we are recording today's event and we'll be emailing you a link to an archived version so you can view the presentation again later if you choose, or if you like, you can share with a colleague. Again, today we're going to be discussing driving breakthrough innovation in financial services, and our first speaker is Fern Halper. She's the Vice President and Senior Director of TDWI Research for Advanced Analytics. Fern is well known in the analytics community, having been published hundreds of times on data mining and information technology over the past 20 years. She's also the co-author of several dummies books on cloud computing and big data. Fern focuses on advanced analytics, including predictive analytics, machine learning, AI, cognitive computing, and big data analytics approaches. She's been a partner at industry analyst firm Hurwitz & Associates and a lead data analyst for Bell Labs. And she's taught at both Colgate University and Bentley University, and her PhD is from Texas A&M University. With that, please welcome Fern, and I will hand it over to you now.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this discussion about agentic AI in financial services. So I'm going to kick things off, and I'm going to talk about the current state of generative AI applications and the use of company data. However, the space is rapidly evolving, so I wanted to talk about the move from generative to agentic because that's where all of this is heading. And as Andrew mentioned, we'll hear from Databricks and Impetus with their perspectives, and we'll see a demo of what agentic looks like in financial services. And we'll spend some time discussing all of this in our panel discussion. So I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that organizations are planning generative AI implementations. Here's a survey we did a few months ago, and we asked if your organization is currently implementing generative AI use cases. This is based on about 250 respondents. And you could see that only 10% said no, and they have no plans to do so. There was another couple percent that said that they didn't know. But in other words, between 85 and 90% of organizations are planning to do something with generative AI. Now, this may be in a consumer model where they're just using off-the-shelf tools to improve individual productivity. So I'm talking about tools like ChatGPT or Perplexity or vertically or horizontally focused tools. And so they're making use of these innovations because those themselves are innovations. Or it might be something more focused on using their company data for the AI application, which is often where long-term value lies. So in another survey, you could see that generative AI was the top investment area in early 2025. And this is from a MaxDiff analysis about what companies are planning to invest in. And you could see here that generative AI and AI applications are at the top. They're the biggest area. And if you look down at the list, people were saying that they were sort of least likely at that point in time, which was early in 2025. They were more likely to invest in generative AI than agentic. But as I said, what we're seeing now is that agentic is gaining momentum. So for instance, in a survey where I'm analyzing the data now, 35% of companies are exploring it for innovations with AI, and about 20% included in that 35% have already implemented it. So it's moving fast. And what I often see with financial services is that whether it be generative or agentic AI, is oftentimes they're planning, to do something that's internally facing as opposed to externally facing, because that carries less risk. excuse me, and typically it's around using different kinds of data, but definitely using things like financial statements and other reports that may be internal or they may get external from the company. So they're using that to derive intelligence. And as I said, we'll see some examples about that actually in the demo. Now, we saw that about 60% of companies were experimenting or implementing generative AI. And in this chart, you could see that close to 90% of those that say that they're using generative AI are using company data with that. However, these may be kind of one-off implementations. Maybe they're taking call center notes or some other type of document that they want to summarize or pull key issues out of, and these applications may not be operationalized. However, we've been hearing a lot about RAG, retrieval-augmented generation, this past year as a way to provide context to generative AI to build these more operationalized and useful use cases with company data. So I have here many with RAG, are actually, so I should say many that are using their company data are using RAG. If you do the math of the 60% that I mentioned before and the 90% here, and then the 60% who claim that they're using RAG, it works out to about a third of respondents in this particular survey were making use of RAG. And now, as I said, the space is moving fast and specialized agents are now starting to dominate, even as companies are building out their RAG applications. And we'll hear more about that from Databricks and Impetus. In fact, the fact is that the group of companies that have their data foundation in place will actually be in a much better position when they're starting to implement agentic applications that are going to require access to their company data and not in an ad hoc way, like what I was talking about before. So quickly, in the case of RAG, and we'll see some other diagrams that look like this, the idea is that it's going to help, say I'm a financial analyst or advisor or compliance staff, it's supposed to help, it will help move faster. So you deploy, say, an internally facing AI assistant powered by RAG. So, typically you can see in this chart that there's documents. So the assistant is going to connect to internal research documents. It could be investment memos, client portfolios, regulatory documents, that data would be converted to some machine readable format. It would have to be processed before that. And then when the employee asks a question, like here I have, what's the latest on ESG bond performance? The system pulls the most relevant content from these knowledge sources and uses it to generate an answer. So the idea is that this content, along with the prompt, is passed to the generative AI model, so it has the context of the questions and the data. So we're taking documents and we're extracting the information and then using that information to provide an in-context, answer along with the prompt. But now what we see is that companies are moving to agentic AI, which are AI systems that are designed to act autonomously and proactively towards specific goals or objectives, often without needing direct human oversight, which is that second definition I have on the slide. And you could see that these articles, one is talking about AI chatbots as a generative AI use case, but now there are these AI assistants that can do all sorts of things like order Ubers and book vacations. So the idea here is that there are autonomous agents that can perform certain tasks, and there's an orchestrator that's going to help to conduct those tasks, basically. So maybe that's looking up an itinerary or booking a flight, two separate tasks in this case. The orchestrator might orchestrate the steps, and as you could see, there's going to be multiple agents involved in this. So typically in more useful or complex agentic workflows where the organization's trying to automate a process, which is what we see as sort of the first step here, this is going to be a multi-agent workflow that's orchestrated. So for instance, instead of asking a specific question, maybe I ask, something what if the bond performance did, something? So the agents would take over this task. They would retrieve all of the reports about bond performance. They'd extract out the relevant entities. That would be an agent. Another agent might call a model that might be needed to perform the analysis. Another agent might synthesize the results. Another agent would build a report. And maybe another one would even deliver it. I think you get the idea. So the point is about the series of tasks that are executed in this multi-agent workflow. The agents take action and they have agency. And as I mentioned, you'll see this in the demo. So obviously you're going to need a data platform to handle the data and agents to act on a curated and governed data as part of this. And so we'll hear from Databricks, but I've listed some of the characteristics that the platform should have to support agentic AI. So first I talk about a unified and governed data foundation. So if you're going to have agents working automatically and autonomously, obviously that needs to be untrusted data. So that's going to include governance capabilities along with potentially semantic models and data lineage tracking to help the agents interpret the meaning and trace back to sources. This may also mean that the governance becomes real time. You're going to need document processing and indexing. So many of the use cases that you're going to deal with are going to include unstructured data in the form of documents. So you're going to need to be able to process them to extract out various entities or themes or concepts. And then beyond that, many of these documents are going to include images or maybe embedded PDFs. So those have to be dealt with as well. You may have to do automated metadata extraction to be able to use AI to tag and categorize content, so that will improve retrieval and traceability. The platform should also be able to provide you with a private foundation model that you want to use. So this is your company data that you'll be using in these applications, and it needs to go against a private foundation model that may be offered, by the company, not your company, but another company. You'll need an agent orchestration layer. So I mentioned the orchestration layer that can determine what agents to delegate tasks to. So orchestration should support reasoning chains, deciding on sub-goals and delegating tasks. Obviously, you're going to need security, compliance, and auditability. I think that it's going to be a really interesting area to, look at the governance of these agents. I mean, obviously, they have unique identities and they need to be able to access only the data that they're allowed to. But, there's going to be more than that involved in terms of capturing, decision traces. So if you have to reconstruct, an action an agent took, you can do that. Observability and feedback loops. So even though they're acting autonomously, there's going to need to be a human in the loop. So some sort of observability features will need to be put in place over any agentic applications. Because they're going to have to show the human in the loop what's actually happening and provide a feedback loop to be able to correct or update any issues. So the feedback from users and outcomes should feed into the model retraining or maybe agent if they have to be optimized. So, those are some of the things, some of the features to think about. That's where we're sort of heading, with agentics. What I want to do now is turn it over to Andrew to introduce our speakers from Databricks and Impetus, and we can get into more detail about this. So Andrew, back over to you.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Fern. That was a great presentation there. And yes, please allow me to introduce today's guest speakers, first of which is Ravi Shankar Rao Vahabjosala with Impetus. Ravi is a highly experienced data science leader with over 2 decades of experience in multiple areas like data analysis, algorithms, mathematical modeling, and simulation. With an extensive background in leading several successful AI/ML initiatives across various sectors like engineering, life sciences, healthcare, oil and gas, energy, BFSI, etc., Ravi leads the data science practice at Impetus. His global team of accomplished data scientists, analytics, and machine learning engineers are responsible for helping customers with innovative and scalable AI/ML solutions to succeed their digital analytics goals. We're also joined today by Prasanna Selvaraj with Databricks. Prasanna is a solutions architect at Databricks, dedicated to helping clients maximize the value of their data. With deep expertise in cloud technologies, data science, machine learning, generative AI, and application integration, he partners with enterprises to modernize their data landscape and drive business transformation. Prasanna specializes in solution selling, guiding clients through process discovery and reengineering to unlock new possibilities with Databricks. He also plays a vital role in shaping product development by channeling client feedback to internal product and engineering teams. With that, please welcome both of our guest speakers today, and I'll hand it over to you now, Ravi, for your presentation.
Sure. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Fern, for walking us through all of the, everything happening with the generative AI, especially going from RAG to agentic AI. And I'll touch upon themes that you brought up, which is very important because the goal for Impetus has been, as we're working with so many customers across many verticals, is to enable the intelligent enterprise, which is what our core, services are focused around. And here, the idea is that enterprises are sitting on a huge volume of data. And here, sorry, I missed this slide. So this is just introducing myself and then Prasanna. Andrew, thank you for covering this. So we'll talk about how we are going from RAG to agentic AI today in enterprise and how this will help us kind of build the next generation agentic AI applications, touching upon all the aspects which Fern brought up in her presentation. Now, if you look at the core areas that Fern mentioned, it's all about building the data foundation, making the enterprise ready to kind of analyze the data that exists internally and using all of that information to drive generative AI applications, whether it may be RAG or now with agentic AI. The core of all of that is the data foundation. So what Impetus here brings to the table, and this is one slide, just gives you a snapshot of all of the work we do with enterprises to power the intelligent enterprise, as I mentioned. So this is to kind of build out the data and cloud platform engineering to help these enterprises kind of bring all of the data they have, and whether it be on-prem or on cloud, to kind of bring the data platform to life. And also Fern talked about building out the catalog, to kind of bring, the areas around kind of identifying metadata and bring all of that. So we in fact are working with Databricks on many of these aspects, and as you'll see moving forward, a lot of these things kind of dovetail into what Databricks is offering. And Impetus has very deep capabilities, technical capabilities in enabling all of these. In fact, helping the enterprises move to kind of the Unity catalog and other areas. So for this, we have an accelerator called Leap Logic, which helps kind of move all of the legacy workloads and help them modernize. This could be from any source to any target. And a lot of other things around this to modernize and enable building these RAG applications or agentic AI applications, which is very important. So as part of that, there is generative AI, generative BI, and the connected fabric, which helps us kind of build the whole framework to enable intelligence from the data stores and bringing all of that to one place. Of course, we are also doing a lot of things around ensuring that governance and cybersecurity are part of this whole system, because that's the core of ensuring customer trust and transparency and traceability and everything, which is very relevant, especially in this area of generative AI today, more than even before. So the story doesn't stop there, because you're just actually building these applications, but to make sure that you can productionize them, manage them in production, and track all of that. We have DevOps services, a lot of things that we bring to the table in this aspect, not only just taking these models and applications to production, but also looking at all the things around ML ops, LLM ops, data quality, metering, and many other aspects. So broadly, this is a whole set of capabilities that Impetus brings to the table as technical experts in this space. And if I can move on to the next slide, as you can see, we have specifically with regard to generative AI, capabilities that span all of these aspects, which I touched upon in the previous slide. And this is going from foundational components, which could be building out a strategy for an enterprise, discovering what needs to be done from point of view of infrastructure and compute and technology choices, and building sandboxes so that you're able to kind of do your experiments within those sandboxes, and before you actually open up to the broader enterprise, and also doing it very effectively on the cloud Gen AI services. All of these foundational aspects are important, and we work with many enterprises in these areas. And so next to that is the data readiness part, where you're looking at creating the data platform. You're looking at data quality, because the models are only as good as the data that goes in, and this is even more true for generative AI. So because a lot of that happens through prompts and all the data that you load through the context windows for any LLM. So contextualizing the data sources is very critical. So this helps kind of use the power of LLMs to make sense of data sources that may be completely disparate, but connect the core concepts within those. So and that is made possible through the data and model orchestration, which is the other part, along with the platform that drives all of these. Now, the data readiness helps us build these enablers to bring value to any application that's built, be it RAG fine-tuning or agentic AI-based applications. But you're working behind the scenes with embedding models, vector databases, and numerous choices to make here, which I'll touch upon in a few slides. But this is a very important aspect, especially for enterprises that are starting off and looking at which choices to make, because there are also costs associated. How do you optimize for those? It may be you're working at the foundational models or LLMs derived from them, or small language models, because they are private LLMs which are tailored to work with your data. So optimal choices need to be made. And all of this through prompt engineering. So there's a lot of work around creating the right prompt engineering, managing all of those prompts, ensuring, across sessions, you're able to kind of retrieve that information and make it easier for users to work with these applications. And once you have all of these pieces laid out, it becomes easier to kind of build a lot of use cases for chatbots, voice bots. You can create knowledge bases, which will be very useful for working within enterprise areas, and also to automate some of these very repetitive tasks, especially some of which were previously done with even RPA. But now what agentic AI is offering is an order of magnitude higher value in terms of being able to, and Fern touched upon this, being able to kind of look at various aspects that you will have to bring to the table. Could be, memory, could be other things, and various lot of these aspects. Sometimes the transparency is very important here, but at the same time also being able to kind of make sure that your customer data is private and kept is not exposed. So for that, we also support a lot of the work around synthetic data generation and ensure that we can create like data using specific tools that we have built, and also ensuring that as these tools are being used within the enterprise, it helps the developer productivity, because at the end of the day, these tools have to add value and be more help the teams do more than they are able to do today. And taking all of these to productionization to ensure that you really derive ROI from these whatever is being built. That's through MLOps, LLMOps, the governance aspects of it, layering the responsible AI parts and ethical AI, LLM safety. All these will come under that, and that's something we are doing today, as I'll explain. Lastly, serving these as APIs, and a lot of platforms exist today, and some of these, for example, maybe through even MCP, Model Context Protocol, and various other things enabling and to kind of make sure that you're able to kind of drive these to production. So we make all of this happen through a reference architecture, and we work at all the LLM hosting, providers, and a lot of the cloud hyperscalers as well, which you see at the bottom here. But this is a part of a larger reference architecture. Like, for example, it involves building a playground and all of the other aspects for RAG. And here, importantly, Fern touched upon the aspects of, building the orchestration and then working with embedding models, vector databases. So this is just a basic, schematic of the foundation, RAG foundation for enterprise AI. The core idea is that helps us build these trusted enterprise knowledge tools, essentially, because it's grounded in the enterprise knowledge. That's all built through the curated data that can be brought to the picture. The user asks a question, and that data is kind of the intent is understood by the large language model, LLM. But at the same time, it's also kind of being enabled through orchestration through an embedding model and vector database, which are equally important. So the choices are immense. So how do you choose the right optimal one? So that's something we will talk about on the next slide. But here, I just want to give you an idea of the whole concept of RAG, because it helps us build context-aware answers through the whole foundation that's been laid out, and ensure that the decision making is fairly fast, because you are actually enabling the search capability, and the search is much more powerful here as opposed to earlier NLP based search. And more importantly, you're kind of bringing in guardrails and compliance to ensure that you're tackling bias and other security aspects. So it improves the compliance and risk checks as well. So that's the most important part here, so that your answers, whatever your answers you're being given by the tool, they're actually approved by the systems, and there's also human feedback that can be brought to the picture here. So the user experience is also improved through the guidance that is provided. And lastly, here the role-based knowledge access is something that's very important, because you can tailor the information based on the roles, and the users can improve this further through feedback, and that's something that's incorporated. So we actually have delivered a solution like this to one of our financial services customers, payroll organization, which I'll talk about next, which is the choice of the large language model, embedding model, vector database, because this is like a foundational piece for the rest of the use cases that can be built further on it. And this whole thing was enabled with Databricks. The Databricks brings a lot of value in terms of being able to bring these tools and solutions and work and utilize components such as Mosaic AI and MLflow integrated into Databricks. So we are actually doing this for large customers today. And the idea is that you will have to kind of spend a lot of time figuring out which LLM and which embedding model and which vector database will work effectively for a RAG framework. Now, ideally, you could do it sequentially one after the other, but the number of choices, even just two choices for each LLM embedding model and vector database gives you 8 combinations, right? So now that's a lot of work and repetition of code. So instead, what we built is a simple single model that helps kind of tackle all the workflows, in parallel, kind of ensures that the system is checked for any malware before the prompts are given to the RAG workflow. And here we are actually doing all of that in Databricks, and it takes the documents that the user provides and creates the chunks based on the embedding models and chunking strategy. And based on that, the vectors are created and stored in the vector database. Now, because of the way different components work, the results you may get for each other may be different. So that's what we're tracking. There's evaluation behind the scenes through ML flow tracing and tracking, tracing, and evaluation. And more importantly, there's Mosaic AI enabling you to kind of connect all these components and make it easy to work with them. So this whole thing just works with a single user click, and we can identify the best optimal choice that works with the data that any enterprise has. And we have tested this across multiple LLMs, and it's being improved continuously. And a lot of other aspects to this are being brought in as well. But more importantly, there's a lot of other things that are covered in this, which is on this slide, but because it's text heavy, and I'll kind of very briefly mention there's a lot of work with continuous evaluation. There's a user interface that's being used through Streamlit, and it supports integration, a lot of other aspects to it. So anyone interested are more than welcome to kind of reach out to us. I'll be happy to answer any more questions. But primarily, it is a solution that helps enterprises really derive value from these tools and make the right optimal choices at the lowest cost possible. So that is the first level. But now with agentic AI, this is going up another notch, right? So essentially, now think of all of the kind of documents that you can bring in. Fern mentioned images. There may be other kinds of data, PDFs, Word. So each of these may require specific, optimization to kind of bring them. So there are agents that you can create, and the user query is just one part of it, because the agents can actually go fetch the information, and based on orchestration, so you could actually incorporate all of these into the framework. And this, what you see here is just a very schematic sketch, but we have built out solutions that enable you to do this very optimally. And we're working with Databricks on this as well. There's a lot of things that Databricks today, with the new capabilities that have been baked in, enable it to do more effectively. One example I'll give you here is all the work we're doing, for example, with financial services organizations, and especially insurance companies, banking, looking at all kinds of different kind of documents, ensuring, this is done very effectively. So this whole framework enables you to do this not just on a simple, search basis, but also being able to take the action and kind of automate some of these steps and build more intelligence into the systems. And of course, the human in the loop is very important, because you want to make sure that the system is still controllable, and you are able to track and improve performance step by step. Because the reasoning for the agents and being able to kind of take actions, ensuring safety through guardrails and all of these, so that the agents are getting the right data, because there's autonomous operation. So all of these are being enabled, and that's what I want to kind of mention, that Databricks is kind of at the forefront of all of these. And here I want to kind of hand it off to Prasanna, who is actually driving a lot of things with Databricks. He's a solutions architect, as Andrew mentioned. And Prasanna, if you want to take it forward from here and talk about the new capabilities in Databricks, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Ravi. And indeed, that was a cool app that's built on RAG. So today I'm excited to kind of introduce what you could do with Databricks Agentic AI. And I have a demo to illustrate a financial planning and analysis tool. However, before we do that, I want to give a brief introduction about Databricks. So Databricks is a platform for data and AI solutions. Databricks pioneered the concept called Lakehouse, which effectively brings in the best of data warehouse and data lakes to enable analytics, machine learning, and AI. Now, in today's world, Databricks has effectively integrated AI across all its layers. So, for example, Databricks uses machine learning across its data retrieval algorithms for efficient data access. Another example could be like, Databricks uses machine learning to pick the best machine types for jobs and workflow processing to achieve a blend between cost and performance. And the most prominent example is to enable text-to-SQL capabilities for the business analyst, specifically the financial analyst. So along those lines, I want to talk about a demo that we built for financial planning and analysis. So this is an end-to-end solution built on Databricks, where you could bring in 10K documents, have Databricks agents parse those 10K documents into financial statements, and have advanced forecasting models, forecast the historical data for learning and convert them into actual forecasting trends, and serve them using FP&A dashboards, or perhaps like a text-to-SQL capability like Genie. So to illustrate in this architecture, it all starts with 10K documents. So Databricks agents is going to parse from 10K documents and extract the financial statements like balance sheets, income statements, and cash flow statements into structured data. So if you may wonder, why are we doing this? When you have this type of data readily available with FactSet and S&P Global, yeah, perhaps you could do that for a fee, or to ratchet up the challenge here. We want to just take those financial statements, parse it from the 10K documents, and illustrate the capabilities that the agents could do. So that's the idea here. So once you have the financial statements, in a structured data format, you could have a financial analyst come to a financial center dashboard or a financial center control UI where they can pass parameters like the revenue or COGS or tax rate or interest rate. And these parameters can flow into the what-if forecasting models, which can learn on the historical data that is already available in the structured data format. And with these parameters can use a forecasting model like Profit or ARIMA and convert into forecasting trends. So for an FP&A analyst, this user can come in and run different scenarios. Hey, what would my forecasting for my company would look, if my revenue grew by 10% and if my tax rate is 4% and my interest rate is 2%. So you can run multiple what-if scenarios and compare and contrast with multiple reports in Databricks. So all this can be done within 100 minutes. So of course, you can do with spreadsheets, you can do with niche FP&A tools, you could do with LLMs, but this is going to take a lot of time. But with Databricks, we could provide an end-to-end automation solution, starting from document parsing to forecasting to FP&A reports. So with that, let me quickly share or illustrate the demo. So here I have a financial forecasting control center, which is a Databricks application, which is a front-end application deployed on Databricks, wherein an FP&A analyst can control scenario parameters like revenue or COGS or tax rate and interest rate, so on and so forth. This will be directly fed into the forecasting models. So now, what we could do is, I'm going to show how the 10K documents are parsed from Databricks and converted into structured format. So, Databricks has recently introduced what we call as Agentbricks. It's still in beta phase, but expect this to be in public preview in the near future. So there are a few types of agents, where you could use information extraction. You could extract information from documents, or you can turn a document into your RAG, or perhaps use a custom LLM. So in this case, let's go ahead and use a custom LLM where we parse a 10K document and ask this agent to extract the financial statements in a given schema. So this is the schema that's the input to this LLM, and it extracted this custom agent. Extracts all these financial statements from the 10K documents. And there are hundreds of 10K documents. So if you're wondering, how you would be traditionally doing this with a Python library or with a third-party parser, it's extremely hard. And even if you get it right, it may not work for all 10K documents for all companies across, 10 to 20 years, if you have to go back in time. These rules are very, very complex to codify. However, LLMs are good at parsing, and that's where, we use agents, just define to the agent that, hey, what we wanted in a specific output format, and let the LLM and the LLM reasoning handle the rest of the logic. So in very few minutes, you could actually configure an LLM, not code an LLM, configure an LLM agent, and pass specific instructions like schema format and what do you want to be extracted from the 10K documents. And bingo, all you have is turn those unstructured content into structured delta tables. Now, once you've turned into a structured delta tables, obviously you can convert into a report. So now, all the historical data from the 10K, documents, either balance sheets, income statements, or cash flow statements, you could, compute all these key performance indicators like, liquidity ratios, profitability ratios, operating margins, whatnot. And, you could use AI dashboards to, kind of sort this through by company, compare and contrast across fiscal years and whatnot. Now, the critical part of this demo is, you can do this forecasting for multiple what-if scenarios. So, let's say, I have this forecasting done for all FANG companies. You could do it for S&P 500, or you could do across NASDAQ. It really doesn't matter. So, here, let me pick a scenario. What if my revenue grew by 10% at a tax rate of 25%? So now I have the data, and I can pick a company name and, sort it through this and understand the forecasting, from 25 to 28 or beyond. So now, this could be run with multiple parameters, multiple scenarios, multiple forecasting models, and all could be done, within 100 hours, within 100 hours in the Databricks platform. So what makes this solution even more unique is, have the ability to interact with the data in a natural language. For example, Genie is the Databricks capability that enables users to interact with the data in a natural language. So for example, here I have like, hey, what is my cash flow margin by company name? Here I have the structured data. It queries the structured data. So, it's far more deterministic than probabilistic, and it gives you the visualization right off the bat. And, in that example, what are the trends in cash flow margin for each company? Genie kind of, takes this prompt, converts into a SQL, and gives you this structured data format. So let's do a live one. So I'm going to pick a question here, like, what is the cash flow margin comparison between, Alphabet and Apple, let's say, for example. So here is how you would see, like, Genie kind of reasoning it, kind of computing the step-by-step answer, and here's the SQL, and here's the response along with, probably we'll have a visualization too. And with that, what we have seen is, some of the advanced agentic AI capabilities of Databricks, where a developer can, parse the 10K documents, turn into insights in literally minutes. So again, it's an end-to-end solution from document parsing to forecasting to FP&A dashboards to text and SQL. So with that, I'll pass it on to Andrew.
Thank you so much, Prasanna. That was a fantastic demonstration, and thank you, Ravi, for your presentation as well. Now it's time for us to move into our panel discussion, so I'll ask that Ravi and Fern rejoin us, and Fern, I will pass it over to you to begin the discussion.
Great, thank you, and thank you both for the presentation and the demo. It was both very informative. So, Ravi, I want to start with you with this first question for you. We were talking about governance, talking about trust. So how do you measure, you work with a lot of different clients, how do you measure trust and compliance for generative AI in a highly regulated industry like BFSI, specifically within the RAG AI playground that you were talking about?
Yeah, thank you, Fern, and Prasanna, thank you for giving us the walkthrough of Databricks. So some of the questions that came up, Fern, definitely relate to the trust and the ability to kind of ensure you're complying with the regulations. So the key aspect to this, of course, being able to explain your output, right? So your model's able to generate, you give it, they ask a question and it'll generate an output. But is a response grounded? So that's something we need to ensure so that we can check the responses adequately grounded. And this we are doing today for many customers through Databricks, and we have to kind of be able to go back to the source from wherever the specific response was brought out from. So if you're able to bring that traceability and ensure that the documents that you retrieved by RAG can also be brought out, and that if, let's say, there's a 10K document and you have a specific information, you're asking a question like Prasanna showed, if you're able to kind of bring that out, that's very useful for the regulators to track down. And that explainability and grounding is central to be ensuring that the trust is managed effectively. Second part is, of course, there are, especially with agents, you have some agents that can play the validation component, and there's AI judges that we bring to the table. So question is, how are you able to make sure that the responses are based on something that, stick to the human defined criteria, in the sense that now the system may generate an output, but if it is if there is toxicity in the response, that becomes a challenge. So we have to ensure that the output is appropriate, tone appropriate, in the sense that for insurance customer, it has to be in a specific way, and for a bank, it has to be a specific way. So the evaluation through Mosaic AI agent evaluation framework, we have seen for the customer we built these applications for both for financial services and insurance. So we have seen a lot of variations. So ensuring that evaluation is met effectively is something important. Lastly, you want to, and this came up in your presentation as well, being able to create the the metadata and tracking and ensuring all the data is adequately cataloged. So any experiment that you do, and this is where the trial of comparing multiple LLMs and embedding models, and also the vector database is important. So you want to kind of do that very effectively through MLflow and Unity Catalog traceability here. So we have a capability to kind of ensure that the full audit trail is managed, especially the lineage from the starting, which is the raw input data. And today that is all managed through Unity Catalog. And we can help migrate customers' data through Leap Logic into Unity Catalog. But the final output is where we are tracking the auditability, and this is very important for regulated sectors such as financial services. So ensuring that any decision is kind of traced back through the source to the output, and not only that, it has to be you have to be able to kind of reproduce it effectively each time you run the scenario. So those are key ideas, I think, is how we can generate and maintain the trust in the system.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, traceability, metadata, etc. Keeping track of all of it and then storing it. I guess you'd have to do that also, which is interesting. So this is for you, Prasanna. And you showed, and we were just talking about the 10Ks. So in that 10Ks to strategic insights demo, that's going to require, you showed complex multi-step orchestration. You had a number of different agents there, and they were being orchestrated. So how does the Databricks platform, and specifically the Mosaic AI agent framework, handle state management and error recovery in a multi-agent system? Because I imagine that that's going to happen, that there will be errors, and how do you recover from that?
Yeah, sure, Fun. I think state management and error handling, error recovery are very critical aspects when it comes to agentic application development. So, and this also pertains to the fact that we at Databricks made an acquisition like 6 months back, acquired a company called Neon. So where we now augmented OLTP capabilities to Databricks. So the feature is called as Lakebase. Now, how does it relate to the agentic state management? Now, with the OLTP capabilities, now you can have multiple agents read and write the state data into this OLTP database with a low latency and high throughput, which was not previously possible with the Delta tables. So this is a very important capability that Databricks now has acquired, and we have already integrated into our core platform, and especially crucial for agentic state management and also for error handling. So you could not only deploy agents, but now you could investigate what's going on. You could track the agent, observe. You could do A/B testing on agents. All of those things traditionally not possible with our analytics capabilities, but now with Lakebase, you could achieve those low latency and high throughput read and writes.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. If you have that type of database, that it could handle the state management and at that volume also. So it seems like it would be very high volume in very complex applications. So interesting. So we were talking about RAG on the playground. We were talking a little bit about fine-tuning a smaller large language model. We're talking about building autonomous agents. So Ravi, let me start with you. For a BFSI client, when should they choose to invest in RAG on the playground versus fine-tuning a smaller large language model versus building on an autonomous agent? Is there like a clear decision framework based on cost and use case complexity that you can provide?
Yes, one, and that's a choice many enterprises are trying to make because it's a very important one, especially today. The cost of compute is coming down, which means you can do a lot more with your old compute, with even with small LLMs. The question is, of course, is the use case something that is tailored for automation? Is there some action that has to be done? And also, is it specifically tailored to any domain? Is there any domain specificity? Let's say banking, financial, insurance sector. So if you take these two dimensions, then it becomes a choice of whether we want to have high domain specificity or low domain specificity, especially that will drive cost as well. But RAG is something that will help you to kind of, for example, address use cases that have low domain specificity, because you can actually get a lot of information on the documents and any questions you ask. But also there's no or limited action complexity, in the sense that there's no specific set of actions that need to be taken on the documents. You're asking a question, you're getting a response. The only thing that's important there is to ensure that the answers that are given are grounded. They are within the capability of the LLM to stay within the enterprise document, data. So if that's the case, then yes, it's RAG would be a choice, because if you're asking a question, for example, on like, for example, we saw the demo that Prasanna did for 10K. If you're asking a question on 10K documents, and obviously you want your response to be restricted to that, and you're grounded to within those. So cost efficiency is goes along with it, but at the same time being able to kind of ensure that you're not hallucinating a lot. So hallucinations can be minimized through RAG. So that's where I would use RAG. But the other choices for fine tuning, where you want to now go for more important aspects where your domain becomes important. So you can actually take an open source LLM, fine tune it on your data specifically, so it has more relevance to your documents, and it generates responses that are tailored to your specific usage of words. For example, some insurance organizations might not use the word individual, they may use the word human. So there are limitations to what they would do. So that's where it becomes important. Again, action complexity is also low for fine tuning. Both RAG and fine tuning you're using to ensure your responses are have less hallucination. So you are making sure that they're grounded, and cost can be moderate. You're not significantly spending. RAG is maybe a little less expensive than fine tuning. Fine tuning, you're spending some efforts in making sure the right data is available to fine tune these LLMs. Autonomous agents, on the other hand, is all about ensuring you can kind of tackle use cases that are very high, have high action complexity, because you may have to take a decision on to do something. For example, you may call a tool to compute something. You may call a agent to go fetch a type of document to verify something. So each of those actions requires a decision. So that's where autonomous agents come in, and with the capabilities for reasoning and also being able to kind of do various other things, you would actually choose the autonomous agents. But again, the cost is something to be considered even at that point. Maybe Prasanna can add more, because he's seeing also similar things there on Databricks side.
Yeah, so for majority of the use cases, right, 95% of the use cases, our recommendation is to start with agentic AI or agents. So is RAG irrelevant? Absolutely not. So with the agentic systems, RAG is kind of encapsulated, or in other words, it's one piece in the big puzzle of how you want to orchestrate a complex process. Right. So now, with regards to fine tuning, yes, there's a small set of use cases that requires specific domain knowledge. Let's say, for example, if you want to build a text-to-SQL engine, definitely you would need fine-tuning, which we would recommend, not to unless you really have to. So, however, the implication there is, you really need to have a large sample set, a large training data, which is very difficult to acquire, or sometimes impossible to generate synthetically. However, there is, if your use case really requires some advanced domain knowledge that is not out there in the public forum or in the general internet, yeah, you would need fine-tuning. But a recommendation is to start with agentic AI. You would definitely need RAG, which is actually encapsulated in most of the agentic systems. And, for the small subset of use cases, where fine-tuning is required, you can pivot into it.
All of that makes sense. I was just taking notes. Okay, yeah, so start with agentic. RAG is encapsulated in that, and Ravi, you were talking about if the domain is really important, and I think Prasanna, you were saying the same thing, that it's going to be important to fine tune, obviously, but the costs can be maybe modest. So we talked a lot about technology. I just want to spend a minute here before we open it up for audience Q&A to talk about the non-technical organizational challenges. So Ravi, in that global payroll leader success story, what was the most significant non-technical challenge, like data governance, team adoption, subject matter expert feedback, that you overcame to transition the RAG AI playground from proof of concept to enterprise scale?
Yeah, thank you, Fern. So this use case was very interesting because the goal was to start looking at being able to kind of adopt GenAI quickly, but obviously the choices of what technology to choose become important, which is where the technology aspects become relevant. But at the same time, the non-technology aspects, like how do you kind of make sure this is usable to teams across your enterprise? What are the requirements around different teams and cross-functional democratization needed to be done? Because every team was kind of doing things on their own at a siloed. So making sure that we are taking everyone on board, and that's where it became important. So at least in the POC phase, we were looking at a small team that kind of started looking at evaluation of multiple LLMs, and based on that to kind of bring in the subject matter experts from these different teams, because they have domain knowledge, they understand what needs to be done. At the same time, because they are a payroll provider, they are looking at not just payrolls, but also looking at various other things. For example, generating resumes, for example, right, for customers, and a lot of other things. So the use cases are different. And they have subject matter expertise, but that expertise is across different teams within their organization. So bringing them all onto this platform. So what was important was to make it easy for them to use, because the input from these teams. So we built like a Streamlit front end, which is very simple to use at the back end. So the teams do not have to directly interact with the more technology heavy aspects of it. They just had a small interface to work with and give us input. So it was a low code, no code kind of a UI that could take inputs and give us feedback on whether the output that is being generated was of relevance or not. So we could actually improve the performance, and at the same time make sure that the system is sufficiently robust enough to kind of ensure that there's trust, so that we are not revealing customer-specific information. We are going by the guidelines that the area governance requirements had to validate. All of those things are important in addition to the technology.
Yeah, that's a good overview. The trust, making it easy for them to use, and also having them trust it sort of at the same time. Makes a lot of sense. Well, I see a number of audience questions coming in. I know we don't have a lot of time, but Andrew, what I'm going to do is hand it over to you for audience Q&A.
Terrific. Yeah, we're short on time here, but we'll still squeeze one question in. Thank you to those audience members that asked questions. And Prasanna, we'll go to you since Ravi just answered that last question here. So Prasanna, the question is, can you talk a little bit more about Unity Catalog and how it provides end-to-end governance for an agentic AI system that calls external APIs or custom functions.
Yeah, sure, Andrew. I think, that's Unity Catalog is Databricks' governance layer, and that's a critical differentiator between other platforms. Since, Databricks provides unified governance not only across the data layer, but also extended to the AI layer, both the machine learning and Gen AI. So with respect to, something like custom functions or external APIs, so, developers have the capability to kind of, register those APIs or functions as Unity Catalog functions. So which will be, again, governed by access control, by security, all the good things that Unity Catalog brings in. And essentially it forms into the same plane as you can govern the data within Databricks. So this kind of extends itself, it's the same permissioning model, same access control, same data security on how you want to audit all these things. So so Unity Catalog, you can not only govern data, but also AI and specifically the functions and external APIs.
All right, terrific. Well, thank you very much there. And unfortunately, we are out of time already. We gave everyone a little extra time today, but please allow me to thank our speakers. We did hear from Fern Halper with TDWI, Prasanna Selvaraj with Databricks, and Ravi Shankar Vahabjosila with Impetus. Would also like to thank again Databricks and Impetus for sponsoring today's webinar. And please remember, we did record today's webinar. We'll be emailing you a link to an archived version of the presentation. And if you'd like a copy of today's presentation, please locate the resource window to download the PDF. And as a reminder, TDWI hosts in-person educational events. Our next one is in Orlando, taking place November 16th to the 21st. As a valued webinar attendee, we're offering each and every one of you $100 off any event package. Please check your post-webinar communications for a unique discount code and a link to further details. And from all of us here, let me say thank you so much for attending. This does conclude today's event.